Hello everyone, and welcome back to Sun Moon Audiobook, the channel where we share wisdom and inspiring book journeys to help you grow and develop your best self, inside and out. A single reed stands in a quiet pond, its slender body unmoving even as the wind dances around it. The surface of the water mirrors the sky so perfectly that for a moment, the world feels suspended like time itself has chosen to rest. And in that stillness, something ancient and wise whispers not with words, but with presence. That whisper is what most of us have forgotten. In a life that shouts, stillness barely gets a chance to breathe. But what if the very thing we're running toward peace, clarity, truth is found only when we finally stop? Ryan Holiday knows something about this. He's not a monk, not a mystic in a robe. He's a modern man, once caught in the currents of ego and ambition, but who, through his deep study of Stoicism and the wisdom traditions, has found a different rhythm, one that doesn't race, but listens. Ryan writes not from an ivory tower, but from the battlefield of everyday life deadlines, doubts, noise, fear, the same world you live in. That's why his words resonate. Because they come from someone who's wrestled the same storms and learned to walk through them with more grace. Stillness isn't slowness. It isn't laziness. It's not zoning out or giving up. It's something far more courageous. Stillness is presence. It's the rare and powerful ability to be unmoved in a world that won't stop moving. It's the discipline to choose less noise, less chaos, less stimulation even when everything around you is begging for more. Louder, faster. And in this book, Ryan isn't preaching from a mountaintop. He's guiding you home to something you've always known, that the answers you seek don't live out there. They live here now, in the space between two breaths. There's a kind of peace that doesn't come from controlling the world, but from releasing the need to. The first doorway to that peace is mastering your mind. Not fixing every thought or emptying your head completely, but learning to observe without being consumed. Imagine your mind like a snow globe that's been shaken, thoughts swirling, emotions kicking up flurries. Stillness doesn't mean shaking harder. It means setting the globe down and watching the flakes settle on their own. This is what the Stoics called control over the ruling faculty. Marcus Aurelius, the most powerful man in the world at the time, wrote in his private journals about the necessity of this. In the middle of wars, betrayal, and illness, he trained himself to return to clarity. Not with more effort, but with less attachment. He knew what you're starting to realize now. You don't control what happens to you, but you do control how you meet it. And meeting it with stillness? That's not weakness, that's mastery. Because when you're still, you can hear what matters. You can see without distortion. You can respond instead of react. And in a world addicted to reaction, your stillness becomes revolutionary. Holiday reminds us that the mind is like a garden. If you let it go unchecked, weeds of anxiety, anger, and comparison will grow wild. But with intention, with stillness, you can create space between the trigger and the response. That space is where freedom lives. That space is where wisdom breathes. But let's be honest, stillness is hard. It's hard because the world doesn't reward it. The world rewards hustle. It rewards noise. It teaches you that your worth is found in doing, not being. So, stillness feels like disobedience. But maybe that's exactly what it needs to be. A quiet rebellion. A sacred refusal to be ruled by urgency. You, who are listening right now, I want you to hear this. Your value is not in how fast you move or how much you accomplish. It's in your ability to return to yourself when everything else tries to pull you away. And to return to yourself, you have to reclaim your body. Not in the performative, curated way. Not with a fitness tracker or a mirror selfie, but with reverence. Stillness of the body is not just rest. It's how you remember you're not just a mind spinning stories. You are breath. You are presence. You are rhythm. Seneca, another Stoic philosopher, warned that we suffer more in imagination than in reality. So many of our storms are not in the sky, They're in our chest. In the way we tense, clench, sprint even when we're sitting still. Ryan invites us back into embodiment to walk slower, to eat without a screen, to move with care. He's not prescribing a lifestyle brand. He's inviting you to live from the inside out. There was a time not long ago when I found myself walking home after a long, hard day. The street was loud, the city buzzing. My chest was tight, mind racing with things undone, things unsaid. And then I saw it, a little girl, maybe 5, dancing in the middle of the sidewalk. No music, no audience, just joy. Her hands moved like petals, her face lit with some secret sunlight. And for a moment, everything stopped. The world faded into a blur, and all I could feel was this quiet ache, not of pain, but remembrance. That I too had once been that free. That stillness wasn't something to achieve. It was something to return to. But we can't return to stillness if we are drowning in noise. And noise isn't just volume, it's mental clutter. It's the news cycle, the scrolling, the comparison, the endless seeking. We are addicted to input, but input doesn't equal insight. Ryan talks about the importance of solitude, of protecting your attention like it's sacred because it is. The average person checks their phone over 2,000 times a day. That's not presence. That's fragmentation. We're splintered across platforms, across timelines, across selves. And so, no wonder we feel lost. Stillness begins with subtraction, with the radical act of saying no, not because you're selfish, but because you're finally listening to your soul. Leonardo da Vinci said that simplicity is the ultimate sophistication. He knew that the more you subtract, the more truth remains. And Ryan echoes this, not just in theory, but in practice. He tells the stories of people like John F. Kennedy, who, in the Cuban Missile Crisis, retreated to a quiet space to think clearly when the world demanded immediate reaction. He didn't act from panic. He paused. And that pause may have saved millions of lives. That's the power of stillness. It doesn't look like much from the outside. But inside, it changes everything. And here's the secret Ryan weaves throughout the pages, though he never shouts it. Stillness is not the absence of action. It is right action. It's the place from which the best decisions come, the calm eye of the storm, the moment before the arrow is released. And without it, we misfire, we hurt, we chase, we burn out. But with it, we move with precision, clarity, grace. So the question isn't whether you have time for stillness. The question is, how much longer can you afford to live without it? Stillness, at its core, is about integrity. It's the quiet knowing beneath the chaos. It's what holds you steady when the winds of life threaten to scatter you. And one of the most beautiful truths Ryan Holiday shares is that stillness is available to everyone, not just monks in the mountains or poets in cabins. You don't have to renounce your life to find it. You just have to begin noticing where you've lost it. Where have you said yes when you meant no? Where have you allowed urgency to override clarity? Where have you abandoned your peace in order to please, perform, or prove? These aren't just small habits, they're soul leaks. And every day, we either protect our stillness or trade it for something we think will save us. But the trade is never worth it. Because the deeper you go into this journey, the more you start to see that most of the external noise is a distraction from the internal discomfort. The discomfort of being with yourself. No masks, no productivity, just you. And maybe that's the hardest part, because stillness holds up a mirror. It shows us what we've been avoiding. The grief, the restlessness, the longing. But that's also where the healing begins. You cannot heal what you refuse to feel. And stillness, gentle and unwavering, gives you the space to finally feel. Throughout the book, Ryan draws from the wisdom of so many traditions, Stoicism, Buddhism, Christianity, but it's not about dogma. It's about patterns. Patterns of truth that echo across centuries, across continents. Truths like this: that silence is a teacher. That nature is a mirror. That peace is a skill, not a condition. That all transformation begins in stillness. There's a reason sages and prophets went into the wilderness, why monks sit in quiet, why artists retreat. Because clarity doesn't scream. It whispers, and you can't hear it when you're running. There's a story in the book about Winston Churchill, and it's more than a history lesson, it's a portrait of balance. In the thick of war and stress, Churchill would retreat into painting. Not for show, not for performance, just to be, to let his mind settle, to step away so he could return with clarity. That's what stillness does. It's not an escape from life, it's a returning to it, more whole, more awake. And you, listening now, maybe you've forgotten what that feels like. To return. Not just to the world, but to yourself. But you can. You truly can. And yet, stillness doesn't mean doing nothing. It means doing the right things with presence. It's not about checking out, it's about tuning in. Ryan emphasizes discipline, not the cold, punishing kind, but the kind that honors what matters. That says, no, I won't be everywhere at once. I will be here, fully, with my work, with my people, with my breath. Because when you're everywhere, you're nowhere. But when you're here, really here, everything changes. You see more, you feel more, you live more. One of the most powerful practices Holiday writes about is journaling. Not because it's trendy, but because it creates a ritual of return, a way to download your chaos and sort through the noise. When you write, you're not just recording events, you're clarifying meaning. You're aligning your inner and outer worlds. Marcus Aurelius did it. Anne Frank did it. So can you. And it doesn't have to be poetic or perfect. It just has to be true. The page can hold what you can't. It can help you see what you've been too busy to notice, that maybe your heart is asking for less, not more. And maybe that's what stillness keeps pointing us toward. Less. Not as lack, but as liberation. Less scrolling, more savoring. Less proving, more presence. Less numbing, more noticing. Because when you slow down, time begins to stretch. Meals taste better. Conversations deepen. You feel your feet on the earth again. You remember that joy isn't the peak you climb, it's a softness you return to. And peace? Peace is not something you find at the end of your to-do list. It's something you practice in every moment you choose not to rush. But it's not just about peace. It's about power. Real power, the kind that can't be taken, only cultivated. Stillness makes you powerful because it makes you unshakable. When you are anchored in stillness, the world can swirl around you and you remain grounded. Decisions become cleaner. Relationships become clearer. You stop reacting from wounds and start responding from wisdom. That's what Ryan's message ultimately gives us, not just a path to calm, but a path to truth. Because only in stillness do we stop lying to ourselves. You see, we all carry stories. Stories of who we think we need to be. Stories about what success looks like, what love should feel like, what failure means. But most of those stories were written by fear. And fear is loud. Stillness, on the other hand, is soft, but firm. It's the voice that says, you don't have to keep running. You are allowed to rest. You are allowed to change. You are allowed to return home to yourself. Maybe you've tried everything else. The hustle, the hacks, the hustle again. Maybe you've climbed ladders that led nowhere. Maybe you've achieved things that only left you emptier. That's okay. That's more than okay. Because all of that led you here to this moment. And this moment is where the shift can begin. You don't have to fix your whole life overnight. You don't need a retreat in Bali or a 10-step plan. You just need one breath. As you see, one pause, one act of stillness. And from there, the rest can unfold. Ryan Holiday doesn't hand you a blueprint. He offers something better, an invitation to live deeper, to live truer, to live more still. Because stillness isn't the end. It's the beginning of seeing clearly, of loving fully, of moving wisely. And maybe that's what you've been yearning for without even knowing it. Not more stimulation, not more motivation, but stillness. That quiet space where you can finally hear yourself again. Not the voices of the world, not the pressures of expectation, but that small, steady voice beneath it all. The one that's been whispering to you for years. Slow down. Come back. You don't have to keep living on the edge of burnout just to feel alive. You don't have to prove your worth through exhaustion. You are already enough, and stillness is how you remember that. But let's be honest, we forget. Often, we get pulled back into the noise, into the habits and the spirals. That's okay. Ryan doesn't write this book as a manual for perfection. He writes it as a map for return, a way to come back again and again to center, to quiet, to clarity. Like a musician tuning an instrument, stillness is how we tune our lives back into harmony. Because when we are in harmony, everything flows. Not easily, not without effort, but without friction. Even the hard things become more bearable. Even pain becomes more meaningful. That's the paradox. Stillness doesn't make life easy. It makes life honest. One of the most moving things Ryan shares is how many of history's greatest leaders, creators, and thinkers relied on stillness not as luxury, but as necessity. Napoleon, despite his rapid conquests, was known to delay reading his mail for days. He believed that most issues resolved themselves without urgent reaction. That principle changed the way I saw time. How often do we rush to respond? How often do we assume that fast equals responsible? But fast is not the same as wise. And not all urgency is real. Stillness helps us distinguish. It teaches us that time isn't something to chase, it's something to align with. Even nature knows this. Trees don't rush to bloom. The tide doesn't panic if it's late. Seasons unfold in their own time, and there is beauty in that rhythm. You too have a natural rhythm, but you can't find it by forcing. You find it by listening, and that's what stillness offers you: a way to listen to your life. A way to move in alignment rather than struggle in resistance. Can you feel it? That subtle shift that happens when you stop fighting the current and begin floating with it? That's not surrender. That's wisdom. Ryan gently reminds us that the distractions will never fully go away. The world will keep turning. There will always be another headline, another alert, another demand. But stillness is your way of saying, I choose what gets my energy. I choose where my mind lives. Because your mind is not a dumping ground for other people's urgency. It's your temple, your creative space, your sanctuary. And it deserves to be treated that way. He also talks about humility not as weakness, but as clarity. The kind of humility that comes from knowing your place in the bigger picture. From realizing that you don't have to carry the weight of the world to be worthy. You can do your work, love your people, live your truth, and that can be enough. Stillness is what teaches us this kind of grounded humility. It strips away the ego's need to prove and leaves only what is real. And what's real is always enough. You might be wondering, where do I even begin? Life is so loud, so busy. The to-do list doesn't stop. The responsibilities don't pause. But stillness isn't about removing responsibilities, it's about bringing presence into them. It's making your coffee without checking your phone. It's driving in silence instead of filling the air with podcasts or calls. It's sitting for 3 minutes with your breath before the day begins. It's saying no when something drains your soul. It's walking slower, speaking softer, forgiving quicker. These aren't grand gestures. They're sacred micro shifts, and they are available to you right now. Right now, not after your inbox is clear, not once you take a sabbatical, but here, in the middle of your beautiful, messy, complicated life. Stillness is not a place you go. It's a place you create, in your mind, in your body, in your choices. You are the artist, and your life is the canvas. What would it look like to paint with fewer strokes? To use more white space? To trust the pauses as much as the colors? There's a quote Ryan loves from Blaise Pascal that says, All of humanity's problems stem from man's inability to sit quietly in a room alone. And he's right. Because stillness forces us to face what we usually run from. But facing it is how we free ourselves from it. What if the next time you felt restless, instead of reaching for your phone, you reached for your breath? What if you learned to sit with the discomfort instead of numbing it? What if you discovered that the thing you were running from wasn't scary at all, it was just unfamiliar? You are allowed to slow down. You are allowed to feel peace. You are allowed to be gentle with yourself. You are allowed to want less. You are allowed to stop performing. You are allowed to come home. And stillness is the key. Because in the end, stillness doesn't promise a perfect life. It promises a more present one. And that is the miracle to be here. Really here, as your life unfolds. To be awake to the warmth of sunlight on your skin. To notice the way your chest rises when someone speaks your name gently. To feel the pull of tears not as weakness, but as release. Stillness doesn't remove your pain. It lets you hold it without drowning. It doesn't erase your past. It lets you see it clearly, so you can choose differently now. That's why Ryan's message matters. Not because it's new, but because it's ancient and forgotten. We've built lives that move faster than our hearts can handle. We've trained ourselves to multitask through moments that deserve our full attention. And deep down, we know something is off. Something is missing. Stillness doesn't fill that gap. It shows you that the gap was never real, that you were always whole, that the wholeness just got buried beneath the noise. You, listening right now, you are not broken. You are not behind. You are not too late. You are simply in motion. And maybe, just maybe, what you need is to pause. Not forever, not dramatically, just long enough to hear what your life has been trying to tell you, long enough to come back into rhythm with yourself. You've done hard things. You've survived seasons that could have crushed you. Now, it's time to soften, to create space, to let life breathe through you instead of chasing it endlessly. This is not quitting, this is remembering. And stillness is the memory that was waiting for you. Stillness also teaches us about boundaries. Not walls, not isolation, but sacred lines drawn in love. It's knowing what you will allow into your mental space and what you won't. It's protecting your mornings, guarding your evenings, choosing your conversations with intention. It's saying no to energy that fractures you, and yes to anything that roots you. You don't need to explain or defend your peace. You just need to live it. Let your calm speak louder than your justification. Let your quiet become your power. And maybe that's the most radical thing of all, that you don't have to fight to be powerful. You don't have to be louder, sharper, busier. You just have to be still. Because stillness is not passive. It is presence with teeth. It is fierce compassion. It is clarity that refuses to be shaken. In a world of reaction, stillness is response. In a world of distraction, stillness is focus. In a world of scarcity, stillness is enough. Ryan writes with the conviction of someone who has tasted this stillness and knows its sweetness. He doesn't sell it like a product. He invites it like a friend. And his words don't demand, they remind that you already have what you're looking for, that your inner world is not a project to fix, but a sanctuary to tend. That peace is not found at the end of achievement. It is found when you stop chasing and start being. So, how do you begin? You begin with one decision: to create space. Maybe it's 5 minutes of silence in the morning. Maybe it's a walk without your phone. Maybe it's turning down the volume of your life by one small notch. You begin not by doing more, but by doing less with more intention. You start by noticing how your body feels, how your breath moves, what your heart whispers when you finally give it room to speak. And when the discomfort rises, and it will let it rise. Let it sit with you. Offer it tea instead of resistance, because discomfort is not a punishment, it's a passage. Through it, you reclaim parts of yourself you've forgotten. You heal in layers. You soften without losing strength. And that, my friend, is what stillness is made of. Not perfection, not constant peace, but honesty, presence, courage. Imagine standing in the middle of a crowded street, cars rushing by, people talking, phones buzzing. And yet inside, you silence. Not emptiness, not numbness, just presence. Imagine being in an argument, your voice rising, your pulse racing, and then a breath, a pause, a choice, stillness. Imagine holding your child, or your lover, or your friend, and not thinking about work or notifications or what comes next, just holding them fully. That is the life stillness creates. It's not flashy, it's not always easy, but it is free, and it is yours. Right here, right now, if you're willing to turn toward it. So I leave you with this, a simple image, a still pond at dawn, mist curling across the surface, the world not yet awake, and you standing at the edge, barefoot, heart open. You step into the water and it doesn't ripple in panic. It welcomes you, and in that moment, you remember. You were never separate. You were always part of the calm. The noise was never who you were. The silence always was. If this message moved you, if it stirred something tender and true inside, I invite you to carry it forward, like a candle in the dark. Share it, speak about it, breathe it into your day. And if you feel called, please like, comment, and subscribe. Your voice matters. Your reflections create ripples that reach others. When you share your own story, your own stillness, you give someone else permission to find theirs. You are not alone. You never were. And now you know the way back. Stillness is the key.